Hello, writers of YouTube. Do you want to connect with your readers? Actually make them feel a deep longing and connection with your work? Well, then you're in the right place because today we're going to go over emotional intelligence and how to add that into your novel. Now, before we dive into emotional intelligence, let's first describe what it actually is when it becomes a part of your novel. When it comes to your novel, emotional intelligence is how you deal with the emotions of the people that are in your novel, how you can give them empathy, effectively communicate what's actually going on in the scene, and if you're writing in, let's say, the first person perspective, a level of self-awareness that the characters have for themselves and for what they have for the story. So let's dig more into self-awareness as it pertains to the person's self-awareness. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a particular of an excerpt from a story that was a first draft. Sally walks in the room and she found that Fred made a peanut butter sandwich. It's evident because he left the fork at the edge of the sink. Now, from that, what can you convey? She has a roommate, a husband, a boyfriend, or someone in her life named Fred, right? He made a sandwich and he left the knife on the sink. But you really can't tell how she feels. Now let's add some emotional intelligence into that scene and see how much better that scene sounds. Sally walks in from work, distraught and carrying on the load of an entire day of being in the office. She turns and looks at the sink. Great. Another knife covered in peanut butter. Looks like Fred hasn't decided if he's going to make another sandwich or not, and now I'm left having to clean it after having such a heavy day at work. You see how the emotional intelligence plays into that now you're gathering more emotion from that person. You're really getting what's going on. You feel the heavy day that she's had. You feel that there's like a resonance that this person has done this before, and you feel like she wants this behavior to stop. That is what you need to be adding into your writing. If you've been paying attention to this series, you'll see that this is something you would add in later drafts, but not your original draft, not your first draft. So when you start doing your editing process, these are things you need to add more gravitas to your scenes. Next up is understanding what your reader is supposed to get from adding EQ into your actual novel. You see, when the reader reads the words on the page, it's not supposed to just be them doing it like it was back in grade school or in college, that they're just trying to read to get information, unless that's what you're writing. If you're writing a novel like sci-fi or drama or romance, you're trying to draw them in emotionally to make them feel like you shouldn't put me down just yet. The scenes should be written in such a way where it aches and it pains them to put the book down. Throughout the day, it should be in the back of their head. I got to finish that scene. I got to finish that scene. And so when you add those little essences into the highly dramatic or highly emotional parts of the book, it makes the person feel more drawn to the character. Now I'm going to give you another one of a bad example and a good example. Bad example. Two guys racing cars. Here we go. Tony and Lance pull up to a red light. They wait for the light to turn green. As soon as the light turns green, the tires spin as they head down the street. They're going down the street at full speed as the cop pulls out of nowhere, tries to pull them over, and they get away at the last minute. That's pretty boring. Now, if this is supposed to be the climax of these two people engaging each other, or if this is supposed to be the end of an act, the end of Act 1 to Act 2, this wouldn't want to make me read anymore. Rewrite it in this way. Cop is sitting there as he sees the two gentlemen at the red light. He knows that he has to bring these two guys in. These are infamous street racers that have been racing on the streets for at least the last 15 weeks, causing all sorts of accidents and mayhem in their wake. The light turns green. Hank, the policeman, grabs a steering wheel. He stares down the hood of his car. The two cars passing by at full speed, breakneck speed, in fact, that when he jams on the gas to get right behind them, he's finding it hard for his car to catch up. He's begging the engine just to give him just 5 more horsepower so he can catch up. As the two men become a dot on the horizon, he knows he has to put in for a brand new cruiser. These guys are dealing with something even stronger than what he has from the PD, and it requires special equipment to catch 2 special types of criminals. Now, you see what I did there with that one? At first, you thought that the main characters had to be the 2 guys driving, but I changed it up and gave the perspective from the cop. Now you can see how the cop can actually really feel some big pull that he has to do this thing. Now, if that was supposed to be the draw from Act 1 to Act 2, I guarantee you're going to want to read more versus the first version of that story. So the next big thing is, how do you add more EQ to your story? It's not easy. I'm not going to pretend that it is. But one cheat, one hack to do is to try to draw from your own personal experiences. In the case of the roommate situation, everyone's had a roommate they haven't enjoyed. Try to draw upon that kind of emotions that you felt in that moment. Don't name people, don't call people out. Just draw off of those emotions and try to put that on the page. How you're feeling, the smells, the tactile feeling in your hands when you grab onto something, the mental back and forth of trying to convince yourself to do or not do something. These are things that you need to make that kind of scene seem better. In the case of the street racers, maybe some sort of competition you've ever had in your life, and talk about how you felt anxiety towards the overall goal, or how much effort it took you to get to that point in your career, or that point in your challenge to actually meet someone who was your equal. These things help draw people in, and it's a little bit easier to write from personal experience and just modified than trying to make something up entirely. For example, I've never been in a love triangle where two other people were interested in me at the same time. I've never been so lucky, and I will never write that. The reason for never writing it is that it would sound ham-fisted. There are some people out there that can actually do it, and kudos to them if they can. But one of the tricks of being a good writer is knowing what you're not good at writing, and knowing that it's better to stay away from areas that you know would come out sounding corny. If you want to challenge yourself, by all means do, but you have to be your own best judge. Did you do your best effort, and did it come out in the best way possible when you wrote it? If the answer is no, you have to have the courage to tell yourself, maybe this one isn't for me. The part of writing EQ is it gives your characters more of a well-rounded feeling to it. A lot of characters seem very blocky and unobtainable because of the fact that they don't have much depth to them. I don't like to use this as an example because I really do love the Terminator series. But one of the best things about the Terminator series is that because he's a robot, Arnold Schwarzenegger really didn't have to give him much depth of field for his characters. Same thing with all the other robots that tried to kill him in the subsequent sequels of Terminator, from Terminator 2 to whatever version we're on right now. But that's fine because these are robots and they're not supposed to convey human emotion. But all the other characters around them, like John Connor, has to give off some sort of fear, anxiousness, excited, loathing. All of these different feelings have to come from something, because if every character was just as rigid as the T-1000, you really wouldn't have a blockbuster on your hand. You'd probably have a lot of people calling it a train wreck than a masterpiece. Lastly, make sure you get other people's perspectives. I know that I might take a rough stance on some topics that I write about because of the influences that I came from in life. I normally give scenes that I highlight as being, these might be touchy subjects to talk about, and give them to my beta readers and say, hey, when you read this scene, let me know, does it come off being a bit harsh? If what I'm trying to do is elicit that kind of response from the reader, that's fine. But if I'm trying to make sure that the tone is such that it wouldn't turn someone off from reading, those are things you want to keep yourself aware of, because we all have blind spots to things in our own lives. We're not perfect, any one of us. And so being able to recognize certain things might come off a bit rough around the edges is a good way to have someone else refine your EQ so that you can refine your novel's EQ. To end on a high note here is that knowing your EQ and being able to put in your novel will not guarantee you millions of sales, but it will guarantee you that you'll have a happier reading group and a loyal following when people go to purchase a novel. I can't tell you how many people will read a book, get 2 chapters in and go, there's nothing here that's drawing me in, close the book to never read it again. Learn how to use it, learn how to master it. We watch this video to see examples that I've given, and maybe it'll help you write better. And if you have any tips or tricks of how to make better EQ in your books, make sure to leave the comments below. My name's Odian, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of the Odian Blog.